My name is Dr. Alex Veselowski, and I'm an assistant professor at National Louis University in the Secondary Ed Department, and I teach math methods. I also, together with Dr. George Lippman, who's in the math department, write a blog called Congruent Thoughts with Alex and George, and the address is congruentthoughts.blog. So today I want to share one of the blog posts that we wrote actually before the pandemic happened, but I think it will be really helpful for teachers who are trying to figure out how to teach math remotely. So I think one of the things that we struggle with a lot with math and that students do is that a lot of students dislike word problems, and they think that word problems are complicated, and a lot of the times they can't figure out what the question is, they can't figure out which information is pertinent. So this idea of notice and wonder with Padlet and DotStorming kind of explores how we can be more creative with mathematics, and I think now is the time to position mathematics as creative rather than as dry and boring. And so the idea of notice and wonder is that instead of posing a word problem, we pose a math scenario. And we ask students to notice and we ask them to wonder what we can solve using the scenario. So for the notice, I want to show a tool called Padlet. And so Padlet looks like this. It's a virtual bulletin board. And on it, we can post a prompt, and then students can post responses in the form of virtual stickies. And we can also ask students to ask comments. So this is Padlet that I did for my students on growth mindset, and I asked them to think about growth mindset and fixed mindset. And the beauty of this is that we can do this while we're with our students on Zoom or any other synchronous experience, but students can also continue working on this after the lesson is done, and they can continue exploring and thinking about the problem. Another great Padlet that I want to share that I did with my students a while back, so it's not active anymore, is I call it Start Seeing Mathematics, and I basically ask students anytime they see, hear, feel, or sense something mathematical to drop a note here. And I think this would be just such a good idea to do right now, because it allows students to explore math in their own world, and they don't need a textbook and they don't need a teacher. And we all know that when we ask people to pay closer attention to something, they see it everywhere. And so there was a lot of really great examples about caffeine and exercise and the Chicago Cultural Center and trains, and it just brought in so many examples that we could actually use for this notice and wonder. So a teacher could pull out one of these examples and pose the question to the class and say, what do you notice? So I think that this is a great time to do that. And the other part of the notice and wonder is the wonder part. So that's where students pose questions. And for posing questions, I recommend DotStorming, which is very similar to Padlet in that it's a virtual board for sticky notes. And you can do pictures or text, so you can see that the pictures are here, but you could also write text. And the only difference is that students are able to vote. So you can see there's little dots underneath here. So a teacher would pose a scenario, and she would ask the students to write questions, and then students could look at all the questions and say, oh, I want to answer that one. And again, students can vote for the questions that they really want to answer. And let's say the questions that get the 3 most votes are the ones that the whole class answers. But then students can take this outside the classroom, and they can continue working on some of the problems that they thought were interesting to them. So they can answer more questions, they can pose more questions, and we can just extend their learning. And then the other thing that I do in this post is I recommend some of the websites where you can find some of these open scenarios. So Dan Meyer's 3 Tests, Rob Kaplinski's lessons, Proof Without Words, Dan Finkel's Prime Climb, and a lot of other really great things. So this is where teachers can really pose meaningful problems and ask students to explore. So this is a post that I wrote before the pandemic started, but I recently wrote another post that I won't go in details, but I will just show it to you so that you have it as a resource. So in addition to being a professor at National Louis, I'm also a mom to a 4.5-year-old. And so I'm always looking to see how I can do math with her so that it's interesting and involves movement. And so there's a lot of ideas in this blog post about how to do math and movement, and how to notice math all around us, and how to continue teaching our students even when we're not in the classroom. So I hope you check out the blog that George and I write, and we will definitely continue writing and posting things that are relevant for today. Thank you.